Welcome to Is This My Fear or Is This My Instinct? And this is the second event, the second masterclass on this topic that I've run this week. And if you do have time and want to listen to the recording from the other one, I'll be sending that round to everyone as well as this recording, because different things come up every time, different questions come up, and I also don't script everything, so different things will come out of my mouth, hopefully different pieces of wisdom. So feel free to watch on the recording. Now, I'm just going to share my screen to begin with, just to talk you through who I am and what I do and why I do it. So juggling a few things here. Hope I can see if anyone else joins. So yeah, is it my fear or is it my instinct? Now, many of you know me. I am a love, dating and relationships coach. I am the author of this book, How to Fall in Love. I recently had a photo shoot, which is why I'm showing off these photos. First photo shoot I've ever done, which is relevant because it's very hard to invest in ourselves, isn't it? And I have struggled to invest in myself and in my business, but here we are investing in myself. And I know how hard it is to invest in ourselves, and also how difficult that is, given that investing in ourselves is actually the thing that generally makes the biggest difference, whether that's time or money or effort. Now, I'm running this particular masterclass, Is It My Fear or Is It My Instinct? Because it's a question that I struggled with for many years. And it's a question that several of my clients are struggling with right now. And it's a question that 3 of my clients just this year have overcome. 2 of them married in the last few months, and 1 of them just got engaged. And I know that I worked with these women on this question. So there is a way through if you are struggling to answer this question. So I married at the age of 48. I met my now husband at the age of 40. And between 40 and 43, I went through, I asked this question. Well, to begin with, I didn't ask this question. To begin with, I just left. I got together and then I left. I got together and then I left. And I didn't understand why I was doing that or what I was doing. And I assumed that it was my instinct that was telling me to leave the relationship. And of course, there were some practical issues, practical reasons. I was living in London at the time. He was living here. I was in my early 40s. I was unsure about children. He didn't want children. That's a whole other story, but and you can read it in my book, How to Fall in Love. But I also realized I was ambivalent about children eventually. So there were some practical things, some questions, big questions, but deep down, I was doing a lot of judging of him. He's not good enough. He's not right for me. He won't fit in my social circles. I don't like the way he does this. I'm not sure if he's this enough or that enough, exciting enough or chatty enough or sociable enough, all these things. And I'm not sure if I feel how I'm supposed to feel. I'm not sure, it doesn't look like it's supposed to look on the movies, and, all these things that I was feeling. And I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. And I kept doubting, and I kept leaving. And then at 43, I decided to stay. And one thing I said to one of my clients this week is, for me, the love really grew after the commitment. Often we expect we expect to feel like amazing from day one and totally convinced from day one. But for me, the love actually really grew after I'd made the commitment. So we made a commitment. I committed 2 feet in instead of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And then we bought a house together, which was a massive commitment. And then we got married when I was 48, a few years ago. So it was possible for me to overcome this question of, is it my fear or is it my instinct? But I had to know to ask the question. The good thing is you're here, you're listening to this webinar, so you're aware that it's a question that you need to ask. Because for many years, I didn't realize I needed to ask that question. And many of my clients, until they started working with me, didn't realize that that question was so important. So I just want to, how do I move to the next thing? Oops, let me just see. So welcome if you just joined. I hope I'm not missing anyone. I'll put that down there. So in terms of other clients that I have worked with who have also overcome this question and found their answer. 2 clients married this year, Anne and GA, and we all worked on this question of fear versus instinct. And in many cases, they were thinking things that I was thinking in my relationship at the beginning. He's not this, he's not good enough, he might not fit in, I don't know if I like his ex, maybe he's a bit this or a bit that, not tall enough, not small enough, not whatever it is. I don't like the way he does this, I'm not sure I could be with him long term. All these questions. Is this my instinct? Is this my instinct? And then ultimately we work on this and we realize, okay, what are your fears? What are your fears about relationships? And then another client of mine has just got engaged, and I know, again, because we went back and forth, I know that we worked on this question of fear versus instinct. She did my one-to-one coaching and my group courses, which I'll talk about later on. And we worked on this question. And I was delighted to see just days ago, that he proposed and she said yes. And your goal might not be marriage, and it's not everybody's goal, but I think you are here because you want a healthy relationship, a healthy and loving relationship. So, and then just one other client who got married as well. She had the same questions, the same doubts, and we worked on it. And she also did my group courses and some coaching and came on my retreat, actually. So this is to give you hope that we don't know which, if you are right now debating this question, or you might think you'll come across it in the future, this is to give you hope that there is a way forward and you can find your truth. Fear or instinct. So there's 3 things that we're going to talk about. One is getting to know your instinct. How do I know if it's my instinct? Spending time with your inner knowing. Knowing your fears and the roots of your fears. That is so important. And getting support to face your fears and follow your instinct. So I think that's why I stopped this. Yeah, that's why I stopped this. There's a few things I'm going to talk about later. But for now, I'm going to continue like this. So fear or instinct. So the first part of that threefold process that I talked about was understanding your instinct, getting to know your instinct, understanding, what is your inner knowing? Now, I believe that you all are very wise and you know the way forward. It might just take some time to dig deep and to go beneath the layers. So I believe that we're all born with this intuitive, strong intuition, connection to intuition, connection to self. We're born with this, this true self. And if you think about you as a young person, perhaps you were full of questions and curious, and you knew what was right for you. And then at some point in our lives, often in our early lives, something happens. Something happens to shake our worldview. Something happens to rock our world. Something happens to make us doubt our intuition. And, you know, from my experience, this was, I started doubting my intuition because when I spoke my truth, the adults around me told me that I was wrong. So, for example, my dear mum, who passed away a year and a half ago, she had her struggles with various emotional health issues and some behaviors that weren't healthy. And I remember when I was very little, I said to mum, I wish you wouldn't do that. I wish you wouldn't do that behavior that I don't like. I don't like being around. And I spoke that as a 7-year-old from my heart, from my truth, from my intuition. And the adult, who is an authority figure for whom we depend upon for our survival, who we think is a godlike person, they're in charge, they know best. In that moment, that adult told me that I was wrong. I'm not doing that. I don't do that. Don't be silly. I don't do that. And then we think, oh, they're right. I'm wrong. I can't trust my intuition. So this sort of spontaneous truth that came out of my mouth, this inner knowing, I can't trust it. It's wrong. I'm not, like, I don't have a clear sense of my intuition. So something like that might have happened, or it might just be a general sense of, you know that stuff that's going around you is wrong. Like, these adults are doing things and your inner knowing says, well, that shouldn't happen. They should take better care of me, or not be having affairs, or not fighting so much, or whatever it is. But your inner knowing, when we're little, we don't realize that we can trust ourselves. We can only trust these people for whom we depend upon for our very survival. So then the inner knowing, the true self, gets pushed down, gets squashed, gets hidden, and we no longer trust ourselves. And we start to put our faith in other things, perhaps other people who tell us what we should think and believe. Perhaps we totally quash our feelings, like I did with food, overeating, binge eating, totally quashed my feelings, and with it, my connection to myself and my intuition. And you might have done similar things. So when we quash that intuition, it just falls down, it gets deeper down, and we lose the connection to it. So I'm wondering if you lost your connection to your intuition at some point, whether you are finding it hard to connect to your intuition. And I'm also wondering if you can acknowledge that you have a good and strong intuition. So the first thing I'd like you to do is have a think, and I'd like us to use the chat, and the chat isn't recorded, so you can write whatever you like in there. I'd like you to jot down in the chat, in your notebook, or in the chat if you are willing, an occasion when you trusted your intuition and it turned out really well. When you trusted your gut instinct and it was actually your gut instinct and it wasn't your fear. So an example for me is when I bought my Vespa scooter. Everyone told me it was a bad idea, that I'd crash, that it'd get stolen. And I knew that I wanted a pistachio green Vespa, and I just bought it. And I absolutely loved it for 10, 11 years. And I think about when we bought this house, I spotted this house and I think my intuition said, yeah, this is a good house. And then when we put in our bid to buy it, when we bought it, then I had sort of massive buyer's remorse and self-doubt. Got it wrong. And that was my fear. Whereas this house has been fantastic. I think my intuition was right in the first place. So do you have any examples that you can share? And if you can share them in the chat, they do give other people, they help other people to understand themselves. So any occasions when you know that you just trusted your intuition and acted in your best interests? If you'd like to share that, please do. And I'm going to be asking a few more questions. So if you're just using your notebook, just jot something down there. Okay, so we have an example, thank you. 2 examples, thank you. Choosing to study Indonesian language and cultures at university, even though people advised against it because they thought I wouldn't find a job. So I love that. You know, this is your heart, this is your truth, this is your intuition, this is your passion, and you know what you want. And all these people are saying no, all these naysayers, and you go for it anyway. And there's another example, buying the house and knowing that you were going to live in it before you saw it, before you walked through as soon as you saw it, before you walked through the door. And brilliant, outbid and came back on the market, which is really interesting because this house got sold to somebody else, and we weren't going to get it. And then I had given my name to the estate agent. If it falls through, call me, and they did. And we were first to see it next. So if you have any more examples, please share those. But the follow-up question is, can you describe the feeling? Can you describe the feeling of being in tune with your intuition? How do you feel? How does it feel when you intuitively know that you are acting in your best interests? How does it feel? If you can use any description, do you feel calm, relief, open? Do you feel peaceful? Now, it might be that you don't feel entirely peaceful because there might still be some fear that you're needing to deal with. But if you go deep down and think, when I acted in my best interests, this is how I felt. If you have any thoughts on that, I'd love you to share them. How does it feel when you're connected to your intuition? Felt still and calm, body free of fear, anxiety, worry, pure stillness, relieved. Comes from the inside and you feel calm, expansive, joyful. Yeah. So if I just think about my relationship, it took me a long time to get to that feeling of calm and peace. So for some of us, it's going to take us time. But I suppose the advantage I had was that I knew my fears, and I'm going to come on to fears in a little while. The advantage I had in what was working in my favor is that I knew my fears. So even though the fear kept coming up, I could sort of dig deeper and understand those fears. And eventually, I never, ever thought this would happen. I am someone who has struggled my entire life with chronic indecision, ambivalence, never knowing, never really trusting. And I am absolutely amazed that on my wedding day, I absolutely had 0 doubt, and I knew that I was making the right choice. And that feeling has only grown since. And you know, it also came when I said yes to the proposal, along with lots of tears and a spontaneous yes and a spontaneous excitement. But you know what? Half an hour later, I was skiing down this slope and my head was going, really? Is that a good idea? Are you sure? But what about this? But what about that? But what about that? But I have to trust that instinctive initial reaction. And there's a difference between sort of impulsive, driven by sort of our wounds. There's a difference between that and a real yes, a heartfelt, intuitive yes. So there's another question I'd like you to answer, and that is, think about a time when you know that you ignored your inner knowing. You ignored the voice inside. And that could be to do with a relationship. It could be to do with a friendship, could be to do with a career choice. And as I said on the masterclass a few days ago, I can think of 3 occasions in the last few days when I have ignored my inner knowing. And just to give you a few examples, there's something I'm really dealing with right now, which is my sort of busyness and addiction to doing things, and my wanting to belong and be part of. And in the last few days, I have said an immediate yes to things. And this is why we need to know what drives us. I've said an immediate yes to things when actually my truth was no, I can't fit that in. And that immediate yes has come from a hunger to be part of, a fear of missing out, a hunger for belonging. And so that's coming from an unhealthy place. It's not the yes that comes from a healthy, confident place. So I ignored my inner knowing a few times there, and I've had to step back and say, actually, I can't fit that in. I can't do that. I'm not able to do that. So can you think of any occasions recently or in the past, could be regarding love, relationships, or it could be something else, when you ignored your intuition and your inner knowing? And if you'd like to share them, please do. That would be amazing. Because what happens in these workshops and in these chats is that we realize that we are not alone, that we are not struggling alone, and that what we struggle with, lots of other people struggle with too. So if you have any examples of when you've ignored your inner knowing, and I think about it with my past dating history, you force yourself to go on a date when your truth is, I am exhausted, I need some time out, I need a rest. But if I don't go on that date, I might miss out. I might miss out on my one chance of love and relationship. But actually, the person who goes on that date will be your false self, who's forcing the issue, who is hungry and can't wait a week until you feel better. So there's a few examples: accepting my current role. Negotiating the exit, but it's damaged your well-being. I hear that, and that's hard, but well done for seeing it. And then staying in a relationship too long, we've all done that. And I'm going to come on to the next question, which is important in a moment. Done it in relationships, ignored the red flags at the beginning, which have turned out to be deal breakers. Yeah, and I've done that too, and we all do that. So you're definitely not alone. So the question I'd like you to think about now is why, because this is the most important question. So I shared a little bit about when I say yes, when I mean no, that my why is because I'm hungry for belonging, because I have a deep childhood wound around belonging, around being part of, and that has driven me a lot through my life. And now I am seeing that, and I'm trying to heal that wound. So I've been driven by this hunger for belonging. In relationships, dating, it's fear of missing out, fear that he might be the right one, and if I leave him, then I'll never meet anyone else. Or it could be fear of conflict, it could be fear of rejection, abandonment, of being alone. So can you answer why? Maybe in relation to the things you've shared, or something else. Why did you ignore your intuition on those occasions? Was there a fear of something? Was there a wound that was a need that was trying to get met, a childhood need? So accepted the job role out of fear of financial insecurity and never finding a new role. And then ego boost by being chosen. fear of abandonment in relationships. Yeah. So often I'm going to come a bit more onto our fears. Yeah, wanting to create a family, not being alone. And I think there's a difference between, I talked about a yes, which is a heartfelt, spontaneous yes, and a yes which comes from an unhealthy place, from a wounded place. And you know, it's natural to want to create a family, to want to have a relationship. But when we're really hungry for that, and it comes from a wounded place that we haven't healed, so we haven't healed our abandonment, our rejection, our broken family that we maybe grew up in. When we come from that place, there's a real hunger, and that hunger makes us override the red flags. Don't trust the intuition due to childhood experiences, which are very hard to shift. It takes a lot of time, and I believe a lot of support. And, you know, I've been on my journey for 20 years. Some of you might have been on your personal development journey for years. And there's always another layer of the onion that we are needing to peel off, which is terribly annoying, very, very annoying. And I prioritize this personal development over everything else, both financially and time, and, you know, having professional support and support from others as well has been so crucial. So we're always discovering new wounds, and we heal this wound, and then there's another wound that pops up. And we're not going to obviously solve everything in this little time together, but hopefully there'll be some things that will help you to think, and some ideas about where to go next. So we ignore our intuition because we lost faith in ourselves when we were younger, because we lost connection to ourselves through some of our behaviors, that when we quash our feelings, run from our feelings. We ignore our intuition because we have these deep, unmet, often childhood unmet needs: to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be wanted, to have a family, to feel part of, to feel not rejected, not abandoned. And that's why we override our intuition. That's why we ignore the red flags. That's why we stay in relationships too long. And there are several ways that we can address these behaviors. So one is to understand the wounds, and this takes time and often takes working with others. So understanding the wounds. So why am I driven by this fear of financial insecurity? Why am I driven by abandonment and rejection? You know, where does that come from in my past? So understanding the wounds so that you can discern whether it's a healthy yes or an unhealthy yes, whether it needs to be a no. So really understanding the wounds. And the other thing that we often forget to do is to spend time with our intuition, to spend time with our inner knowing, to spend time with our truth. So I was, for many, many years, and still a little bit now, absolutely classic for asking everyone their opinion about what I should do. And like someone else knows better. Everyone else knows. And, you know I'm a coach and I help people through these questions, but my role as a coach is to help people connect to their truth, believe in themselves, and have the courage to follow this inner knowing. So we need to spend time with our intuition and our inner knowing. So I'd just like you to have a think about, how long have you spent in the last week with yourself in terms of connecting to yourself, connecting to your intuition, hanging out with your inner knowing? And if you'd like to answer that in the chat, please do. Some of you might have a morning meditation practice, which goes on for half an hour every day. And if so, absolutely wonderful. I tried to meditate in the morning and I had fallen off the wagon. But as of the last masterclass, I have committed to doing 10 minutes every morning of connecting to my inner knowing. And that's different from walking in nature, from listening to a meditation app. I mean, it could be whatever works for you. For me, I do a lot of going to the beach and swimming in the sea, and I think, oh, I'm connecting with my inner knowing, but I'm not sure I am. I think I need to sit still and perhaps switch everything off. So meditating every morning, mirror work to get in touch with what's going on for me. Brilliant. So have a think about how long you spent recently connecting to your inner knowing. Something's just happened with my screen. Why is that? What's going on? Don't know what's going on. Oh, there we go. Okay, started listening to Headspace. So some of you will have a practice. Slip into overanalyzing. Yeah. So I would like you all to commit for the next week to something more than you are currently doing. Now that if you already have a really good practice that works for you, brilliant. Some of you might want to just shift that a little bit or tweak it a little bit and add something else in or do something a little bit differently. Those of you who are challenged and find it hard to do it regularly, I would like you to commit to this group right now in this space. Pop it in the chat, if you will, to whatever it is, 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day of connecting to your inner knowing. So if you'd like to share that, please do. I understand this problem of overanalyzing, and I think that's where we want to try and, it's not really emptying the brain, but when we get when the overthinking kicks in, it's just bringing it back to your breath, just spending that little bit of time out of the head, in the body, in the heart. Overthinking, overanalyzing is one way in which I manage my anxiety. So have a think about, what are you anxious about? And then that's where the work needs to be, on the anxiety. So that could be however you process your anxiety. It could be journaling, it could be breathing, it could be surrendering. So if you'd like to make a commitment, please pop that in the chat and this is about committing to spending time with your inner knowing. So the point of this is to remember that one is that you do have a strong intuition and you can trust your intuition. It might take some time and practice to get in touch with it. We need to spend time with our intuition and our inner knowing. So we need to commit to a practice of spending time with ourselves. We need to understand why we ignore our inner knowing. Why do we do that? You all know the consequences of doing that, but why do we ignore our inner knowing? And that comes down to fear, which I'll talk about now. And what do we need in order to follow through on what our intuition is telling us? You might need support. You might need people around you. You might need a professional. You might need some more courage. But, you know, I believe that you can connect to your inner wisdom and that you can follow through. So hopefully you've made that commitment to yourself about spending time with your inner knowing. And just notice, you know, if you're like me, you'll be doing lots of things and you'll be running around a bit. And maybe it's about slowing down, spending some time with yourself. And the thing is, what is our inner knowing Okay, adding another 5 minutes. Brilliant. Of silence. So there are these two things that are going on. Is it my inner knowing? Is it my intuition? Or is it my fear? Now, in relation to dating and relationships, I'd just like to do a bit of a brainstorm of the possible fears that might be showing up for you when you go dating, when you enter into a relationship, when you think about deepening a relationship. So I'd like you to share in the chat and possibly jot down in your notebook what fears show up for you when it comes to love, dating, and relationships. I'll mention a few: abandonment, rejection's there, fear of being needy, fear of being on your own, being lied to. Some of these are coming from me and some of them from the chat. Fear of not being listened to. Fear of letting someone see the real you because it may be unacceptable and rejected. So fear of being fully seen, fear of being fully known, and of not matching up, of not being good enough. Fear of losing your independence, fear of being suffocated or trapped in a relationship, fear of making the wrong choice, fear of missing out on all those other people you might be dating if you choose this person, fear of losing control. So you might have, and I had lots of those fears. If I think about the fears I had a fear of abandonment and rejection, and a fear of loving and losing. Those fears came from, they all come from my childhood, and they're all interwoven into different experiences of my life, but some I can pinpoint, if when my dad left, when my parents divorced and dad moved out, okay, so I'm loving this man, I'm wanting to get close to this man, I can't get close to this man, and now this man is leaving. So my experience of love equals being left, not feeling good enough, thinking there's something wrong with me, thinking I'm not worthy of love, that I'm not acceptable. And that's my experience of love. And my experience of love, if we're trying to experience love with a parent who is emotionally unavailable, we will also feel abandoned, rejected. So we'll be in an intimate, close relationship with mom, dad, whatever, but we won't feel the love. So an intimate, close relationship will feel empty. It will feel painful. It will feel hurtful. We will feel abandoned and rejected. And of course, because we are innocent little children, we think there's something wrong with us. It must be our fault. And then we carry that into the rest of our lives, that there's something wrong with me. I'm unacceptable. I had a fear of being suffocated or trapped in a relationship because my experience of relationship was one where I felt responsible for someone else's happiness, that it was my job to keep them alive and to keep them happy, which is a huge responsibility for a child. And therefore, intimate relationship, suffocating, don't want to do it. So all these fears that we have, I had a massive fear of making the wrong choice because I didn't trust myself to make the right decision, because my intuition was questioned when I was really young. So I didn't trust myself to make the right decision. What about making a mistake? That fear of missing out that comes from this sort of lack of belonging or broken home, missing out on all the other people if I chose this person. So if you can imagine that we are going dating with some or all of those fears that we have all mentioned. So no wonder it's challenging. I want to tell you that you're not alone, that I absolutely empathize with the fears that you have, and that there is a way through them. So knowing our fears, listing them as we have just done, understanding where they come from. And I know, this comes up all the time in my coaching practice, that people have an experience of relationship or marriage that looked like this in their parents. So perhaps conflict, argument, betrayal, affairs, abuse, suffocation, whatever it is, we saw this model of relationship between our caregivers, and we thought, I don't want that. And so we then go into the world thinking, well, I don't want that, but then part of us does want that because we are human and we long for love and we long for connection. So that's where we get into the push-pull. So I long for connection, I long for love, I long to be part of, I long to be in family. But when I get close to intimacy and commitment, all these fears get activated. But I remember what it looked like with my parents, but I remember how it felt. It felt like abandonment and rejection when I was in an intimate relationship before. And then what happens is those fears translate into decisions about the relationship. Now, in my case, those fears translated as lots of nitpicking and finding fault. And I don't know in your case, and I know I have some coaching clients who are really in the middle of this right now. And sadly, I can't tell you which one it is, whether it's your fear or your instinct, but you do know. You do know. And the important thing is to understand that you have all these fears and to understand the roots of these fears. And then to see whether these fears are showing up in your relationship in a particular way, which might be keeping someone at arm's length. It might be finding fault with that person. It might be rationalizing in order to stay in the relationship. So it's okay, you know, it's good enough. Probably won't meet anyone else. This is what it's meant to be like. I remember my parents' relationship. There wasn't much connection. This feels normal, this feels familiar. So it's rationalizing to stay in the relationship or rationalizing to leave the relationship. So I don't like, and it can be as simple, it was for me, you know, I need someone who was educated a certain way, or I need to be with someone who speaks Spanish because I speak Spanish, or I need someone who can dance, or I need someone who my friends might like a bit more, even though my friends love my partner. But at the time, like, would he fit into my circles? So we start rationalizing. And, you know, it's important to know all the other things that are going on. And if you haven't read my book, How to Fall in Love, I recommend it, obviously, because other things that are going on is when we really don't like something about someone, probably we don't like it in ourselves, and it's a real trigger. So if I perceive that my partner is weak, or I perceive that my partner is indecisive, or I perceive that my partner isn't a very strong character, and that totally annoys me, it's likely that part of myself, the weak part of myself or indecisive part of myself, that I am not able to accept that either. And the healing comes with self-acceptance and self-compassion. So I just want to see what's in the chat. Parents' relationship look perfect and peaceful. And then we get disillusioned, disappointed when ours doesn't match up. Yeah, and I've had that as well. I've had, not in my experience, but in the experience of some of my coaching clients, that I wonder, you know, our expectation of how it should be. But there will be some healing in other areas about the choices that we are making in terms of who we are drawn to, and whether we are drawn to people who can't meet our needs. So let me just check the time. These things always go really quickly, and you know, I'd love to delve deeper into this with you. So I'll talk about that in a moment if you'd like to explore these things further. So know your fears. Where do they come from? Identify the roots of those fears, and the roots will be multiple and the fears will be multiple. And then try and figure out if your fear is finding reasons to stay in the relationship or leave the relationship. And then go back to that feeling, that inner knowing, that sense of peace and calm that we talked about earlier, a sense of connection to self, that this feels right, that this feels right. Now, I shared something on the previous masterclass in response to a question that I'd really like to share here. We need to work with ourselves as individuals and not compare our relationship experience or dating experience with anyone else. So you will have come across people who just knew that when they met this person, they wanted to be with this person, and maybe they got married and that worked out. I just knew that he was right for me, or she was right for me, or they were right for me. I just knew. And that used to drive me crazy because I never just knew. There were always these questions and these doubts. If I am trying to find a relationship in which I just know, and I keep looking for that, I keep looking for that instant conviction, then I'm going to sabotage myself, because that's not who I am as a person. Because of my childhood wounds and because of my fears, I am never going to be someone who just knows when it comes to love, because I'm afraid of intimacy and abandonment and rejection and so forth. So I have to work with who I am and not try and be someone else. So if you're waiting to just know, that might be your experience if you don't have a lot of baggage to work through. If you don't have your issues and your fears, that might be your experience. But if you do have issues to work through and wounds to work through, and I imagine you do if you are watching this, then this fantasy of just knowing will keep sabotaging your relationships, because you will keep looking for it and you will think this is never, ever enough. And the other thing we'll keep looking for is, you might not do this, but I certainly did. I'll keep looking for that Hollywood passion, like it always feels like this. It always feels amazing. I will keep looking for that. And that will keep me single for many, many years. And that's kind of the child in me who lives in this fantasy world where it's all black and white and there's no shades of gray and there's no challenges. And that's the child of me who's looking for the fantasy of perfect care and perfect relationship, because I didn't have it. And none of us had it. So there's something in my book about the stages of the ideal, ordeal, and real deal, or no deal, which is in the book and also on my courses, which you might find interesting if you haven't looked at that yet. So I'm going to recap, and then I'm going to do a little bit of information about ways to deepen this journey, and then we'll do some questions. And I appreciate we're getting close to time. So spend time with your inner knowing, that commitment that hopefully you've made to yourself to spend time with your inner knowing. Understand what it feels like when you make really good intuitive choices. Peaceful, it feels right, you feel calm. And that's different to how sometimes you might feel in a relationship where you feel sort of on edge or unsure. But also work with yourself as you are, not as you hope you would be. So if you are someone who doubts, who has indecision and ambivalence and has childhood wounds and has fears, then you're not going to just know. And it's not going to be all problem free. And you're going to have to do some ordeal bit. You're going to have to go through the ordeal bit in order to get to the real deal. So understand your fears and get some support to face your fears. So let me just share about a few things that you could, where am I? I have a few offers and a few things that you might want to explore. One thing to say is through, where am I? I'm not very good at operating multiple things at once. One thing to say is through August, I am hosting Zoom dating clinics, a bit like this, Thursdays at 1 p.m, so the same time as today, for an hour, 1 till 2, and you're welcome to come. And it's going to be more of a Q&A, so bring your questions, bring your struggles, and I'll try and answer them. You can also send them in advance. So that's happening through August. I have something that I would love you to take a look at. So my How to Fall in Love, Laying the Foundations course, which some of the women who you heard earlier, Fiona, for example, she took that course and she's now engaged. So this is a transformational 3-month program, and it starts in September with group coaching. And it always has an optional complimentary, an optional coaching call, but I'm offering that inclusive of the price. So the course is £550. It's a 3-month program, and it includes ongoing support as well. So with group coaching. So take a look at that, or book a discovery call with me, email me for more information. And then I have a couple of offers on my self-paced courses, and all this will be in a follow-up email to you, so you don't necessarily need to write it down now. £20 off the Step Inside Reconnect with Your True Self course, or How to Find an Emotionally Available Partner course. That's a new course that I created earlier this year, and use the code FACEFEARS20, and £50 off my big self-paced courses. And just a few more quotes from Alice. I feel like a different person, and I'm not exaggerating. She took both those courses, and she shared on the masterclass last Tuesday that she's happily in a relationship. Joyce, we have been on an amazing transformational journey together. She's taken the courses and done coaching, and there's a few more quotes there from some of the women who've taken the courses. And it's not just about finding love. In all cases, it's often about changing our lives and making huge transformations in our lives. So coming to questions now, but questions on your next step. So spend time with your intuition and your inner knowing. Commit to something more than you're doing right now. Come to my free dating clinics, Thursdays at 1 o'clock through August. Book a free discovery call with me, which I'll put the link now in the chat, or explore coaches and courses on my website. Or there are obviously lots of other people who can support you, other professionals. So I would just love you to work through your challenges and to find the life and the love that you deserve. So I'm going to put a few links in the chat. And one other thing I just need to tell you about, actually, share screen, is my retreat. So in Turkey, so that's my free dating clinics on my website. You can register there. These are the courses that I've talked about. I'll put the link in the chat now. And this is my retreat in Turkey in October, which is where we do this work, deep healing work, personal development work in a small group alongside a fantastic holiday. So I will send all that information to you. So I'd love you to put any questions in the chat, or unmute yourself and ask a question. If you unmute yourself, it's still recording for a little bit longer. There'll be a little bit of time for questions. I'm just going to go over time a little bit for that section. If you have a question, pop it in the chat or unmute yourself, and let me put those links in while we're here. Oh, I have a feedback link as well. I wonder if all those, yeah, they've all gone in. So there's a feedback form there on the masterclass if you have a moment. There's a link for a discovery call. And there that's the link for my courses. And if you want to explore the retreat, just go to my website, The Face Fears 20 is on the lower cost courses, and the Face Fears 50 is on the self-paced higher value courses. So back to you. Are there any questions? I see somebody needs to go, no problem. And if there are no questions you want to ask in the chat or on video, on audio, I'll switch the recording off and we can have a conversation. Okay, if you are not getting your needs met in a dating relationship and you are practicing expressing your needs to your lover, what advice? When to leave? Good question. It's so important to get our needs met in relationship. The first thing I would say is, are you meeting your own needs in life? Are you meeting your own needs in your life? So often, and I absolutely believe in getting our needs met in relationships, but often we show up in relationships with a bucket load of needs, that some of which we need to get met outside of a relationship. So I'll put that there just as the first question. Are you meeting your own needs in a relationship, with your relationship with yourself? So how is your well-being? How is your health? Are you meeting your needs for connection with other people? Do you have enough support around you? All those things are really important, because otherwise, if I have no support around me, I'll go into my relationship and I will need him to give me loads and loads and loads of support. And that will be very heavy on him and he might feel suffocated. So, and I've done that in the past and the relationship broke down. I needed this guy to give me loads and loads of support after my dad died. And what I needed to do, I needed his support, yes, but I also needed other support from other people, so that the weight that I put on him, the burden I put on him, wasn't so great. So I just put that down there because we need to meet our own needs as best as we can. So if you're not getting your needs met in a relationship, well done for expressing them. I think this is it's a boundary issue. So here is a need. If it's a reasonable need, then I need you to meet it. Otherwise, I cannot continue in this relationship. So you give the other person a choice. So this is my boundary. This is my need. This is kind of my bottom line. I need you to meet this. And that person has a choice. They either meet your need or they choose not to meet your need, knowing that the consequence is that you will leave. I'm just thinking about a scenario that I have in my book. And this might be different to your situation, but I remember I was dating a guy and I got a sense I wanted a committed relationship, 2 feet in, hang out together, lots of time together. That's what I wanted. I had a sense that he didn't want a committed relationship. He was a bit flaky, younger than me. And I could have done a number of things. I could have just continued and hoped that he would change, even though deep down I kind of knew, my inner knowing was, I don't think he's going to change. I could have demanded, could have come out really heavy and demanding and controlling. But what I said was, this is what I am looking for in a relationship. Let's have a chat. This is what I'm looking for in a relationship. These are my needs. I don't know what you're looking for, but I'd like you to think about it and then come back and tell me. So are you looking for a committed relationship? Are you looking to go camping together, spend weekends together, spend lots of time together? Or are you just want to hang out with me on a Wednesday night? And I put that to him and I gave him a choice. And it was frightening because I think I deep down knew that the result of asking for my need would be that the relationship would end and I would be rejected. And that was the result. He took about 2 weeks, but he came back and said, I can't meet your need. I don't want a committed relationship. Obviously, that was devastating and hurtful. But thank goodness I asked the question. I asked for my need to be met. I found out the truth that he didn't want to meet it, and it ended. And yes, it hurt. But without that ending, I wouldn't be married. So I think it's about a boundary. This is what I need. You have a think about it. And then come back to me and let me know. And otherwise, I'm leaving. And leaving is painful. But ultimately, that opens the way for another relationship. But make sure you're meeting your needs first. There's another question related. What's reasonable to ask? So this comes back to your, should we meet more often? You're just meeting once a month and rarely phone calls. So what I am hearing is that your needs aren't being met. And I know that you know what's reasonable. I know that you know what you need, but there is some fear about acknowledging that, because the result of that could be that the relationship ends. So I believe that we know what is reasonable. We're just afraid of saying it because of the consequence. And that is across the board. Relationships, life, friendships, family, work. We're afraid of the consequences of speaking our truth. I get the sense that you would like to meet more often. And I think that's reasonable myself, but it's not up to me. It's up to you and what you believe is reasonable. What you need, it's up to you and what you need. Great questions. Thank you for those. If there are no more live questions, I'll switch off the recording. And those of you who want to say hello or ask any further questions, I can stay on till 1:15. Yeah, so I will leave it there. Thank you to those who are watching on recording. You will receive an email with all the links and so forth. And if you'd like to invest in yourself and in your relationship and work with me, I would love to work with you. So let me stop the recording.